There we go.
There you go. And I think when introducing yourself, if you are a member of the coalition steering committee, introduce that as well.
Great. So welcome to the May meeting of the Carolina Community Coalition. It's our year in review. We're excited to be here. Mark, will you start with introductions?
Why don't we start with introductions?
Yes.
And we'll start.
Great, thank you. I'm Elisa Liggett and I'm with Student Conduct and Academic Integrity and the Student Care and Outreach team.
I'm Mark Shook. I'm actually the current coalition chair, and I'm the dean of students.
I'm Emily Revised. I'm coalition coordinator and part of the steering committee.
I'm Kat James. I'm the Gamecock Recovery Program Coordinator.
I'm Adrian Anderson, with the Office of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity.
I'm Andrea Pack, and I'm the executive assistant to the dean of student.
Michelle Otero, also with the Office of Student Conduct and Academic Integrity. Courtney Bazan, Department of Student Life.
Kat Yaffe with the Office of Student Conduct.
And I'm Laura Miliani with the Department of Student Life and Gamecock Entertainment.
Great. And I'm Amy Harrigan, Director of Substance Abuse Prevention and Education. And introducing themselves in the chat, April Barnes from University Housing at USC, Emily Cato, Director of Healthy Campus Initiatives here at USC, and Marguerite O'Brien, Director of Live Well at Coastal Carolina University. There's some other folks who haven't yet introduced themselves, and hopefully they will soon, or I will call you out, whichever we need to do.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Anna Edwards from Student Life also joining us on Zoom. And if at any point y'all can't hear the folks in the room, just let us know.
All right, so this is our final coalition meeting of the year, and as become tradition, this is where we're really working on sharing data. One of the most impressive things about the coalition is that it represents multiple units on campus that are looking at not only alcohol consequences, but the environment. The coalition has been fundamental in several initiatives. And so what we'll do today is we're going to share data from multiple sets, but I wanted to review our goals as kind of pronounced. One is increase cannabis misuse information and resources, expand access and awareness of Flexzone, diversify participation in the Carolina Community Coalition, which we are trying to do, increase communication efforts to community stakeholders, and increase awareness of recovery. So these are 2022, 2024 goals as in our biennial report. So with that, we will start the presentations. And again, y'all are welcome to interrupt individuals as they're presenting if you have questions. So it's not one of the meetings where you have to hold your questions to the end. So we will start with off-campus living and neighborhood relations, then move to student conduct, then to Sape, and then to Gamecock Entertainment. We're really excited about. All right, off-campus.
So it is my pleasure as coalition coordinator to step in on behalf of Blair, who is from the Office of Campus Living and Neighborhood Relations. We have all mouthful names. So to that end, if you interrupt me for a question, I won't have the answer, other than I will get back to you because I'm willing to look into it for you.
But there are representatives from student life.
Yeah.
But there are other representatives, so we got you. All right, so first up, the short end of these paragraphs is the off-campus living and neighborhood relations office is really, their goal is to provide assistance to students as they transition from dorm life to living off campus, but then to also maintain that connection with the university. So it's really a wide-reaching office. In this past year, they had 6 community living workshops, reached over 74 students. These community living workshops are set up in partnership with student conduct, and for students who are sanctioned with things such as large gatherings, noise complaints, trash. And so in partnership also with USC PD, Blair and Mark Tevapov would have a virtual workshop where the students really get to hear what being a good neighbor is about, what local ordinances are, and it's really this educational outreach opportunity. And as I said, 74 students were outreached with this year. In this past year, there's also been a shift towards a more one-on-one with students. with a partnership with family and parent programs. Specifically, there were 2 presentations during the weekend, and there was over approximately 250 attendees. That was a very successful outlook that they said that they were interested in continuing. Overall, a lot of the work that Blair is doing is partnerships with these off-campus housing property managers. A big section of that is the apartment property managers. Overall, 756 touch points. That's emails, phone calls, really anything that comes down to if they have a concern or they're just asking about new information. These touch points are very wide ranging. If you're curious about that information, that's data that I can look into for you. As well, there's panel discussions that were offered up, I believe, the last Friday of every month. And in those, it was an opportunity for the office to touch base, say, heads up, there's these football games happening, or St. Pat's and 5 Points about to come up. Here's some things to engage with your tenants in the month upcoming. So this is a good way to keep that communication open. This is a long report. Feel free to go back and see the recording of this on YouTube later to read through the PowerPoint slide. But the idea is there is an incident report procedure. We do have methods going forward. Historically, parents and others will think that maybe the students aren't getting in trouble or there's no follow through here, but in fact there is. Reports can be made. We have a system. The system does work, and it goes through these 6.
I just have a question about that. I'm a long-time resident of the community.
Yeah.
And in years past, the off-campus incident report forms have been helpful here this past year. However, we haven't gotten any contact back from the office regarding these incident reports. We're talking huge frat parties and such as that. So we have concerns that we're not even getting an email. We get copies of the incident report, but when we request an email, a response, nothing. Last I reported, I asked for a phone call, nothing done. So given previous administrators of the off-campus housing projects, we had a much higher response rate. We're also concerned that individual homes or neighborhoods aren't really getting the attention they're due, because apartment complexes have their own security, they have systems of dealing with such things. But in neighborhoods, when large groups of students rent houses as off-campus party houses, and we can pretend like they don't exist, but we know for a fact they do. They even blazon their fraternity or sorority letters on those houses. So I'm frustrated, as are many in our community. We're wondering where we go from here.
Right, and so the primary complaint is, in years past, you would receive, when you put an off-campus incident report in, you would have direct communication from that office, and that's dropped down this year.
Like to zero.
Okay, we'll have to work with that unit. So Emily's not with that. That's the introduction, but we are glad you're here, because part of the coalition here, direct feedback from community members. So
Well, I'm really glad I caught the event and was able to get here.
Yeah.
It's difficult to find somewhere to park, and then it's like.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you for coming.
We're great, and one of the things that I'll be happy to do is catch up with you after the meeting offline, and chat through that. And that you directly contacted with Blair as well.
Yeah.
Well, Blair has been in contact with the neighborhood organization. But that's separate from the individual complaints that are filed. And so, yeah, I don't want to say that she hasn't made contact with the community at large. But when we're submitting an off-campus incident report, it's serious. It's not something that we play around with.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, thanks.
Oh,
We'll definitely follow up with you on that.
All right, thank you.
This is how the process is supposed to work.
Yeah.
So this is how it's worked, but this is also good, and this is further emphasis of why this meeting is important. And I want to reiterate, thank you for coming.
Well,
because
and thank you for being open.
It needs to be, it's related, it's not
Yes.
negative very much. So past years, you can see there was a slight uptick, more than slight, for 2020 to 21, but I will note that, as mentioned in last year's May meeting, that number was upticked because there were a lot of large gathering complaints, and that's because of the city ordinances about having more than 10 people in the gathering.
Yeah, and let me also say to that, you know, the Olympic community is in the county. Right, important to note. And so our coverage of such things, we have 4 officers to handle a huge area of concern. So, and people also just got tired of filing the complaints because they weren't seeing any results. So I think the last time we actually got numbers on the Olympic community, we had something like 71 complaints in a year.
That to the university or to the
To the
police?
university, it was reported in one of these gatherings some years up, like, I believe was
Yeah, I
involved
think
at
that's
that
what's
point,
next.
but yeah.
And a lot of those, when you're filing off-campus incident reports, are you also filing police reports?
Yeah, a lot of times so, and
Okay.
that's also been another difficulty that we run into. The officers are oftentimes 22, 23 years old. They're not really interested in, you know, addressing this problem because they're just fresh out of school themselves. And so we have unwillingness to take names or to look at the license. And of course, we all know about the license issue, you know, they have 10 different licenses from different states with their photo. And so it's problematic.
Olympia is in Richland County.
Right.
So they're outside of the city.
Right, which is why we would so desire some help from USC PD, understanding that, you know, it's on the university property, but the impact of the university far surpasses its geological boundary.
That does bring up a good point. We have an off-campus behavior group that meets weekly and bi-weekly to discuss. We have police representation on that, but that's city police, not county. So we may want to look at that as well. So thank you for the knowledge.
So the variety of reports from this year, as I said, they come across crime and safety, interpersonal violence, trash, noise and party, large gatherings tends to be the largest. The instance reported by neighborhood. So strangely to that effect, usually Olympia is listed as the one having the most incidents reported, and this year it was lower, which again could be a factor of all sorts of things.
Well, and one is also, we have a really great community action team member who is proactively met with traditionally problematic houses. So they could go in and say, hey, dudes, keep it down. So that's been helpful, but once again, not getting any response from the university, turn people kind of cold to the whole process.
Before you go to the next slide, I do want to make the mention, because this has been mentioned in previous times, the importance of reiterating that law enforcement should be involved, because out of the 63 of this year, only 41 law enforcement were in contact. So it really needs to be this holistic effort involved. So we try to reinforce, like, please call the police. There's more that we can do.
So part of what we were told was that 911 has record of it. So sometimes it depends on the officer. If they feel like filling out the report, well, they do. If not, well, there's no record. And to be perfectly frank, people are worried if they, have them come to their house or they report their name and then, the kids will find out. And then we've had a lot of elder abuse occurring in our neighborhood with the alcohol being the issue. They're fine young people when they're not drunk. But boy, once they get drunk, they're threatening, they get up in your face, they physically intimidate. So there's no desire for us to get any more involved than to call the police, anonymously for fear of retribution. And I think that's important for you all to take into account.
And I know the police have worked this year. I think they've shifted some of their responses into working with the landlords of the houses instead of the residents of the houses, because that's been reported after they're having more benefit with the landlords threatening to kick the young out, which typically is your men, but not all the time.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
But the elder abuse is concerning. And as students, they do represent the University of South Carolina.
Anything else? Emily?
And that is it for that. So again, if anyone, especially on the Zoom, has any questions, please, let us know. Look into it, and anyone who's watching this recording on a replay, feel free to email us sape@sc.edu and we'll look into it.
So pivoting a little bit into student conduct. I think on our next slide, we talk about how our big change this year was getting rid of fines. And so we wanted to provide this matrix here for y'all, just so that you could take a look at sort of what we're doing that's still the same and what we're doing that's a little bit different. So as you see for alcohol, the online alcohol education modules, those are things we've been doing and been seeing a lot of success with and kept that up this year, along with the parental notification. However, instead of the fine, we are now doing an alcohol reflection essay that combines some decision-making aspects and some alcohol, policy type questions to provide a really positive opportunity to reflect. And we've gotten really great feedback from the students that the blend between the reflection essay and the online alcohol education modules are really educational and restorative and really kind of take away that punitive aspect. The outcomes for drugs in a first offense are pretty much the same, just without the fine. We really did not make any additional changes there, as we felt that all the other items there really kind of lean toward and provide for that education and that restoration. In terms of the second offense, again, getting rid of the fine for alcohol and drug, but really leaving a lot of those things still the same. So not much has changed in terms of outcomes, except for getting rid of those fines. But we have gotten a lot of really positive feedback from the students that they are appreciative of kind of the educational and restorative lens that we're taking. These are just some data points here. Over 648 students have completed those online alcohol education modules. So it is wide reaching and provides for a lot of good data as well. 80 students have completed the TAO modules, which are also online and free, and they address alcohol and drugs, alcohol and drug use. And so that is something that's a little bit more elevated that we might use in a variety of circumstances. 68 students have completed random drug screens, and over 500 or more reflection essays have been assigned. So that could be the alcohol essay, that could be the decision-making essay, that could be the if I were suspended essay. We have a fairly comprehensive batch of reflection-based essays that the students can participate in. So those really get assigned pretty frequently, as you can see. 48 students were sanctioned that off-campus workshop, which we talked about a little bit in the last couple of slides. 114 students have completed STIR or STIR Plus with the Sape office, and we also get a lot of really good feedback from that program that the students enjoy the one-on-one contact and really being able to build that relationship in sort of a judgment-free zone. And so we get a lot of good feedback there. 35 students attended the tobacco talks workshop, and then there's some other kind of individualized outcomes, but these are good ones.
Questions. So are those on-campus students living on campus, or is that the university as a whole?
So we need
So that's what percentage, 0.01% of the total pop?
Which statistic?
The 648 students completed the alcohol module, what percent of the university's population?
Those are individuals that have been sanctioned.
I understand.
Take that.
I just understand, yeah.
Now, we do require alcohol EDU, which is an online module that all incoming students are required to take.
That's good, okay.
And they actually have a registration hall that they don't do that, and our completion percentage is in the high 90s.
About
That's
89%.
better. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Amy will give more details about that.
Yep.
Yep.
So, it's a
Fantastic.
good question.
Thank you.
Want to provide some additional information about alcohol and drug transports as well. Things are pretty similar to the way that they've been in the last couple of years in terms of alcohol transports. We are seeing that number come down pretty significantly from the 1920 year. The drug transports continue to be low and continue to be pretty much the same number across the board, but we are seeing the alcohol transport number continue to come down, and that high risk drinking not be kind of as big of an issue as it has been in years prior. As you can see there in the 4 years.
Before you do that, Amy, would you kind of touch on, so this is an interesting one of those statistics that when we talk about the impact of the bar license protests in 5 points, and the outcome of those, part of that is you're able to see it here in that dramatic kind of jump down with alcohol transports.
And I've got that in a couple of slides when we put the alcohol EDU data with it so that we can make it even more robust.
And
Yeah.
that also has to do with the driver's license checks are more robust as well.
Right.
So that's very important.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think we've seen a big shift in how alcohol is served in 5 points, which is driving down this. Now we just have to figure out if that where that enforcement, where they're going, right? And how we make sure the enforcement looks the same in all parts of the city. Yeah.
In terms of game day, we know that this is often an area where we see a lot of high risk behavior. This year, we did see ejections come down, 252 total ejections, down from 302 the previous year. So coming down a little bit, but still fairly high. 210 of those were alcohol related. We are working with student ticketing and athletics to collaborate to make sure that we're getting the same outcomes and the same kind of ejection process for all the sports, as we did see a slight uptick in ejections from basketball and baseball this year. Which we really haven't seen a lot in the last few years. It's mostly just been football. In terms of football, kind of looking toward the fall, more games are at night, and students are kind of wanting to stay for some of that. So that may have some impact on the numbers we see this time next year in the May meeting. And also that a lot of the games are in November as well. So the students have been around and kind of seeing how that is going to impact night and later in the season games when potentially will be quite good, and kind of seeing how that affects things. We are seeing that students are looking for that additional tailgate option. You know, a lot of those tailgates that the Sape office hosts and things like that are something that students are looking for. Because if they want to tailgate and they want to go participate, but they don't necessarily want to go to the fraternity lots, they are looking for an alternative. And so that's something that I think is a great opportunity for the coalition to continue to support, because the students are looking for that and really want that. In addition to more educational opportunities. So, you know, we're doing a lot of comprehensive education. We're going into the one-on-one classroom. We're teaching about game day. You know, we're teaching about amnesty. We're doing all of these things, but these, you know, continue to be an issue every year. And so just continuing to see as a coalition how we can continue to expand that education.
And for the care team, we have a level of concern chart. So the highest level of concern is any self-injurious behavior. And so we're just taking this as a snapshot of the severity of cases. Of course, these are the students that we worry about the most. And certainly these are the ones that we focus most of our time on because they could have the most severe outcomes. So we have 145, we end in June. So it's tracking pretty closely with self-harm, disordered eating, suicidal ideation, or suicide attempts. Which is going to be, again, about on par. And those are the students that absorb most of our time and we devote most of our time to. And so when we look at resources and a lot of the environmental factors, as Mark talked about, we have a lot of different partners that work with this particular group of students. Our totals, I know, are on the next slide. I will.
There you go.
Amy.
All right.
We have a 30% increase. And so it dipped during COVID and then it continues to rise. And that is pretty consistent across the nation with what we are seeing. And so we are ever so grateful for the fact that we will be more than 1.5 people doing case management. So this is a big relief, but part of the beauty of this is it's like anything related to sexual assault or other dangerous behaviors, where the more reports we get, the more we can respond and connect students to resources. So we are grateful in many ways for a percentage increase, but when we look at what those are for, it's pretty consistent. Students are kind of dropping off the radar, and it's hard to scoop them back up and get them reconnected. And so when we talk about sense of belonging and academic supports, and mental health concerns, all of these things are wrapped up in the fact that we're seeing that exact manifestation in what students are looking for based on what they are reported for. The other good news is that we're having more faculty report, which is always good. So the more eyes and ears we have that aren't just student affairs folks, the better. And so lots of students reporting students, which is a great sense of their confidence, and faculty reporting students is particularly here. Right now, we have 731 cases since this was published, but we're really trying to wrangle those students back in, because we're afraid once they are gone for the summer, they may not feel by the time they come back that the issue is all that important, but we know that it is. And so we still want to be able to serve those folks. Again, we range in the 700 area, up from 560, which had been the previous 2 years. And right now we're in the process of evolving our basic needs area and working with the Leadership and Service Center and providing extra services to students experiencing food and housing insecurity, school supplies, all kinds of things. So that should be, we hope, almost exploding in the next year as far as once students know what is available to them. So we are looking for Master's of Social Work students to help with that, all kinds of folks, and we should have somebody hired in that position within the next month in conjunction with student health. So, and this just gives you kind of a, what is the work like? Points of contact, it's almost 6,000 as far as talking to somebody who made the report, talking to the roommate of a student who's been impacted, talking to the faculty member who is impacted. And so our virtual drop-in started during COVID so that students would have as many ways, and the community, to reach us as possible. It's still a lower number, but we want to offer as many touch points and as many access points, I guess, as possible. Basic needs right now is at 16 cases. We know from our other surveys across campus that 21% of students say they are interested in more information about basic needs. So that's why we're anticipating, we see this gap, that this is going to explode. Because students who answer that through the UAC are invested in that information. But the most typical thing we do is a soft intervention, to call a student and say, how are you doing? Somebody's concerned about you. This is what they've expressed to us. Do you identify with that concern? What ways can we help you? 403 of those this year, and then 140 connection to mental health providers on and off campus, helping students get connected. So with themes, we can tag team. I love it when we predict something and it's kind of incorrect. We were afraid that after COVID, people would be like, oh my gosh, I'm owed this freedom. And it has manifested in the opposite direction. So as we've seen, the hospitalizations and the highly dangerous types of behaviors have reduced. And that also is nationally. So we are relieved there's nothing more than what a coalition wants and a conduct office wants, more than to see those types of numbers reduced. Party referrals are down, and we know that's where a lot of things happen that are wildly unwatched. So that's a relief that party referrals are down. And alternatives, thank you to our student life partners over here, are more and more attractive. And so thank you for the research that you do, showing that other students are saying we're not drinking at all. So these trends happily are in a direction that we all support.
So I have a question, and I don't know if this is the time to bring it up. In years past at these meetings, statistics on sexual assault have been provided. I have been concerned. I used to be able to access that information on Nexus Lexus community crime maps, but both Richland County and the city police have stopped reporting sexual assault and rape on that site. That is greatly concerning to me and to others in the community as to why that would be. Within a 2-mile radius of the university last year, our reports of sexual assault were pretty astronomical when you compare them to the national average for large cities or cities of our size. So do you all track within 2 miles of the university? And because, for example, in that last year data, you know, 2 of the sexual assaults happened on campus, but the majority were off campus. So I was wondering if you all track that information, and if you would know why it is that the city police and the county have suddenly stopped reporting that data.
I was not aware that the city had stopped reporting those data. Obviously, the university statistics are available online through our Clery reporting. I do know, probably one thing you may not be aware of, the university has created an Office of Civil Rights in Title IX, and greatly increased staffing in there. And there are 2 representatives within that office that do participate on the city coalition team, which meets regularly and has police presence. So they are, the university is in connection with community resources and reporting through that group.
Right, because the university had been also importing data into community crime now, and they no longer do that either. So I'm wondering why that might be, making data for the community impossible to access except for through Freedom of Information Act.
Our-
Incredibly crazy.
The university information
There's
is
no Clery Act.
publicly available on the website. You don't have to do a FOIA request for
Right.
any of that data.
Okay.
It may not be, it may no longer be reported through the media that you mentioned, but it's available, actually, it's mandated by law. It's mandated and it's free and available.
Sure.
The team can share the link with you. You can share it with whomever, but the
Okay.
university data is still there.
Yeah.
Well, that's fabulous,
Yeah.
but when you consider that it's like 2 out of, you know, many more, I'm concerned about, as are other people within the community, the amount of sexual assault that's occurring outside of the geographical confines of the University of South Carolina.
The university, if we receive a report that involves an incident of interpersonal violence that is impacting one of our students, even if it occurs off campus, it can
It's
be
included.
reported to our off-campus civil rights and Title IX.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't just worry about just where we are. If our students are impacted in that particular area, the university does maintain.
Yeah, it's just a significant number, and like I said, when compared to other cities of like size, university cities, it was a significant number that should be a concern to all.
Well, I can tell you this, since the university has created Office of Civil Rights in Title IX and bolstered staffing in that area, I believe there's been increased trust with the university, and that's resulted in increased reporting. So that is trending in the right direction.
Would love to be able to access that information for that area, so wherever, you know, community information we can receive it.
Mhm. It's my turn.
Yes.
Talk about substance use. So one of the things that we structured this meeting is to help us think about like students off campus and what those incident reports get like, what happens when they get through the conduct process, along with all the other violations, and then broadly what's going on with substance use among our students. So a couple of points of data that are hopefully exciting, right? So we've got increases not just in the number of educational programs and presentations that our office did last year, but we literally doubled the amount of people that we reached. Since we became a community distributor of Narcan, we've given away almost 1,000 boxes, which is kind of amazing. And we know we've heard of at least 3 examples where that potentially saved a life, but I'm sure there are many more than that. We've had about a 15% increase in students completing Screen U, which they do through first-time alcohol violations, but also through events and tables from our peer educators as well as organizations. And then we've got about 120 students who've completed the basics, which is STIR.
And maybe talk a little bit, explain to what Screen U is, because it's
Oh, sure.
fascinating technology.
Yeah, so Screen U is an anonymous online screening and brief intervention program. So it is well-researched intervention, and basically students can do it
on their phone anonymously in about 5 minutes, which is really key to getting them where they are. So it asks them the audit questions or the QDIC questions if they're doing the version for cannabis, gives them some personalized feedback about their level of risk, and then engages them in some conversation by asking some questions about obstacles and barriers, and then shares resources. So it's a very quick intervention. We've had a lot of success actually out here in the Rotunda in January, when students are thinking about what changes they might want to make in their health. Lovely. One of the busiest intersections in Columbia right here. So
By the way, it's an firefighter.
oh
There you go.
we get to hear them all day long. So yeah, Screen You it's an exciting intervention. It's a good program that we can use with organizations, but also with individuals. So it's got a kind of a lot of uses. Our STIR program, in addition to the referrals from Conduct, we also take referrals from student organizations, from providers up in the health center. Parents actually are one of the biggest resources, and this year quite a few students who are coming in as self-referrals and saying, this is out of control and I need some help. So
And if there are individuals outside the organization on the call, STIR is what we call our basics program. So it's the nationally recognized best practice in this, what we call it. So the basics are called STIR.
right. And then in terms of recovery support and Gamecock Recovery, we provide 4 on-campus meetings every week. There's a wide variety of 12-step within walking distance of campus every day. So our campus support meetings include all recovery Dharma, a Ready to Make a Change, which is a harm reduction focused meeting, and our newly retooled That's Some BS, Boundaries and Self-Care, for students who may need to talk about some toxic relationships and how that is showing up for them.
Define recovery Dharma.
Recovery, Kat, will you share about Recovery Dharma?
Recovery Dharma is a recovery pathway. It's an established community off campus that's based on Buddhist principles. So it includes a 20-minute meditation, reflection, reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have that meeting once a week on our campus. There's a similar program at Smokestack in Casey, if folks are interested in community.
Mhm. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. And is that one of the meetings that we've got folks from other schools in attendance, or not as much anymore?
Recovery Dharma was our biggest sell during the COVID times.
Yes.
We really expanded that. We offered it really aggressively to students across the Southeast, as lots of other recovery programs were trying to get more offerings available to their students when they were in more isolated living situations. And so we did have students attending Dharma as late as last May from 4 different campuses. This year, I think folks have kind of settled back into their on-campus lives in their own institutions, so we've had less of that.
Or graduated from whatever
yes.
institution they were attending.
Yes,
And
2 of our
yeah.
regular attendees.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we did train 105 new faculty, staff, and students as recovery allies this year. That's about a 40% increase compared to last year. So everything's on the up and up. And then finally, Collegiate Recovery Day, which many of you already know about, was our celebration at the State House, where the governor issued our proclamation for South Carolina. And we brought folks from all over the state. So now the fun data nerdy stuff, which I'm always excited to share. Alcohol EDU is now required community education because it includes modules on several different content, but I'm only talking about Alcohol EDU today. 7,000 of our students completed the course as of May 1st. And so this is a requirement, like Mark said, that they have to complete it before and during their first semester, or they end up with a registration hold for their second semester. It includes a lot of education and scenarios and skill building in the first part, and pre and post surveys. There's a lot of good published research about this program. So we answered 707 calls and emails, most of those probably in about 10 days in November and April. But that is about 50% down from where we were 5 years ago. So we have steadily been able to increase completion and decrease how many frantic students are calling us. So
Exactly. So this is, the kind of the same charts I present every year. This is survey 1. So the bulk of these students completed this prior to arriving on campus as freshmen. What we saw, which we knew was coming, was this trend and we are at record low high school drinking across the country and have been for about 5 years now. And so we have more and more students coming in the door without experience with alcohol. And so COVID bumped that up even more because students lost a lot of that end of high school transition to first drinking experiences as they ended high school. So they come to us with much less drinking experience. That also means that, we were expecting this year to see that go down, to see the COVID bump of non-drinkers kind of go back to pre-COVID times, and we have not seen that. So we are in August at 70% of our freshmen saying they had not had anything to drink in the last 2 weeks. And then, you see the variety of folks across the spectrum. More important, I think, to us is what happens after they've been here for 6 weeks. So they take that second survey, typically 6 to 8 weeks after the first course. So for most of these folks, it's in October. Again, that COVID bump has continued. So we've got 60% of our freshmen in October saying, I've had no alcohol in the last 2 weeks. Now, those folks are not living off campus, right? More important, maybe for me, is that when you look across, when you see the drops in heavy drinkers and problematic drinkers, right? So although we all know that these are folks who are drinking underage, so it is illegal, we also know that the highest risk drinking is the one that has the biggest negative impact on themselves and other people. And so problematic drinkers are folks who have 8 or more drinks on the last occasion when they went out. For women, 10 or more for men. That is a significant amount of alcohol for a 19-year-old to be consuming. So the fact that we have gone from 11% down and continuing that trend of now at 4% is really a positive movement. And I think is attributable to all of the other environmental changes that we've seen. The other one that this is always the question, right? Where are they drinking? The question they get asked on this survey is, what is the location? And only students who report drinking are on this, right? So if you say you didn't have a drink in the last 2 weeks, you're not asked this question. So where is your primary drinking location? And so I might stand up here for a second. If you remember during COVID, all the bars and nightclubs were closed. Remember, these folks are not of legal age to drink, right? But during COVID, we saw this drop where big chunks of them said, I'm not drinking at bars and nightclubs because they're closed. And we saw this bump up in I'm drinking at my friend's apartment because that's where they could. And we also saw the bump during COVID of on-campus residences. This is the year that we had a dramatic spike in alcohol consumption in residence halls because they were getting caught because there were 12 of them in a room. And so we had that bump as well. So that has returned to kind of pre-COVID levels. Athletic events has returned to kind of where we thought it should be. But our bars and nightclubs is back up this year to 35%. So what will that mean for what happens next year? As these patterns continue, as the opportunities. 5 years ago, I said, not only are they drinking in bars and nightclubs, licensed establishments, but they're drinking in significantly problematic ways and getting in trouble and going to the hospital and all of that. Now what we can say is they might be drinking in bars and nightclubs, but they are not having the consequences of all of the measures has come down.
And
So
I can
that's-
give you somewhat real data point.
Yeah.
What happened yesterday? Yesterday,
Last day of finals.
last day of finals. Where were many of our students?
Shakes.
How do I know? Because
You drove past it.
That's the line.
Uh-huh.
However, I intentionally look, because I got a text from another cabinet member,
Uh-huh.
you're students. I said it was a field project for HRSM and Darla. But we didn't have any incident.
Mhm.
We noted the same thing last Friday.
Mhm.
I drove through 5 Points and there were hundreds of folks out.
Yeah.
And when we were talking to the officer on the call, I was like, I went home expecting a couple of calls that night. And the police officer said, yeah, there were people, but we were not seeing the fights, the
Yeah.
problematic behavior. Now there is one bar that has shifted over to the Vista that the police are getting ready to shut down. There's one person that adopted the old 5 school model and stuck in the middle of Vista, and they're having major problems there.
And I think the answer is they are out,
Right.
but they're not being overserved to the same extent that they were 5 years ago, right? They're not, and there's not, there's,
It's a combination of not being overserved and also being more conscious themselves of what they're consuming.
yep,
And locally, the establishments, a lot of them are under agreements with the Department of Revenue to
right.
agreements to follow the law.
So there's $3 drinks instead of quarter drinks, right? So $7 doesn't send you to the hospital anymore like it did before. That's a huge environmental shift. This is the data that I mentioned before with you, Kat, is like, we've got this shift. We saw that connection of students transported to the hospital lining up with where they said they drank and how much they were drinking. And now we're seeing that drop where we only had 37 hospital transports last year, but they're back up to saying they're drinking in bars and restaurants. So we'll see what comes next. But I'm hopeful that I think the way that they're drinking in bars and restaurants is different.
Rex, and one thing to notice on that slide, the coalition really coalesced after those 254 alcohol transports.
Yep. That's when the license protests started. So,
Question.
Yeah.
Are you tracking the students who are transported from neighborhoods as well?
yes. So all students who are transported to the hospital are referred to our office for an assessment. Right. And so if they're transported and they come through the conduct process, then they see us. One of the things we do is ask them on the night you went to the hospital, where did you have your last drink? Because we're really curious. This is used a lot in DUI research to be able to say, like, if you went to the hospital when you left that bar, chances are you probably shouldn't have been served that last drink. So let's track that. It used to be with 37, I can't do much with the data because there's not enough, which is a good thing, but we're not seeing the same trends with maybe one exception. So there's 2 or 3 establishments that we are paying attention to their social media, tracking calls for service. The Columbia Police is taking the lead on one of the ones in the Vista that has been the most problematic. And so we'll see how that shifts things, but also the Department of Revenue is issuing licensing in a different way than they did before. We are running out of time. Just realized that, sorry. I wanted to throw this out there for those who hadn't seen. This is the 2nd year of our DAOTAS funded campaign around cannabis. You heard Dean Shook mention that that's one of our goals at the beginning. So we've got that campaign that was happening this spring again, with both on social media and in person with some pretty attractive things. We've given out a couple hundred of the tea break books. So I think we'll see when the ACHA numbers come out, what impact we've made on that behavior.
Does that include CBD?
It does not. So yeah, this is specifically focused on psychoactive cannabis products, not the
Delta 8s and 9s or 3,000.
yes. Now Delta 8 would be included in this because it's psychoactive. Yep. Okay. Sorry. I'm pitching it to y'all. No.
We will see through. We'll end it on a really good.
Yes.
So I'm here to share a little bit about our Thursday After Dark program. So just a quick overview of what that is. It is our late night programming meant to be an alcohol alternative option for students to do something fun on a Thursday night that gets them out of their residence or their apartment, but is in a safe environment. So all of our programs, most of them take place off campus at a venue that we
rent out or an activity we provide for students to do. We provide shuttles from campus to all of those, so they have a free ride to get to and from that place. And every event is absolutely free to students, which is really cool. So if you go to the next slide, these are our numbers for the past academic year. We had about 28 events, 14 in the fall, 14 in the spring. Again, they happen every single Thursday evening for students. Our average event attendance is about 193. So it kind of ebbs and flows just based on what the activity is, what students are interested in. You'll see our highest attended event this year was our USC takeover night at the Fireflies with 556 students. And this was the first time we did that event to the scale that it was. We like painted Tiger Park garnet and provided free hats, garnet Firefly hats for students and things. So we're excited to see that. Hopefully that attendance will continue to increase, that students get really excited for it. But we have bowling night at Bolero that had over 300 students at it. Our viewer screen haunted house had like 300 to 400 students at it as well. So we have some pretty high attended events, but average about 200 for each of those. You'll see that 5,355 number is the overall Carolina cards that we swiped throughout the year, but that 3,299 is the unique students. So we engaged with over 3,000 students within the academic year. They attended at least one of our Thursday after dark events, which we think is pretty cool. At most of our events in general with Gamecock Entertainment, we see that freshmen are most likely to attend those. But with this Thursday after dark, we have seen an increase in upper class students as well as graduate students, which is really cool. And this program really caters to them because they don't have to come back to campus. They can go somewhere cool in the community, drive themselves there. They might be a little bit closer based on where their apartment is. And so we are seeing an increase in those upper class student engagements, which is cool. You'll see that 42% off-campus residence number as well. So that number continues to increase also, which we think is really great. We do a lot of programming on campus outside of TAD, which is intended for on-campus students. And so we're really excited to see that number of off-campus residents at our Thursday After Dark program continue to increase. And then we've always kind of had a much larger engagement with female students than male students. So we're really trying to get creative with what kind of offerings can we provide, what are other venues in the Carolina community that we can take students to that will really engage that male population as well, and hopefully start to see that number increase. So if anyone has any suggestions or ideas for other places to go, please let us know. But this is just an overview of the last year. Moving forward. Here's some examples of the places that we took students this year. So Village Idiot, Sapeology, like I said, the Fireflies, the South Carolina State Museum was a brand new one we went to this year. And the feedback we've gotten, students are like, I would never pay money to go there, but the fact that it's free, I went in and maybe didn't experience the full like 3 hours that we're there, and they love it. And we do a couple of events on campus. Just at those like not super peak times, maybe around fall break and whatnot. One of the places is here at the Wellness and Fitness Center, we'll do pool nights out on the pool deck, which is really cool. So we found some really cool and engaging locations that students are really excited about. So the Thursday After Dark program started about 4 years ago. So just wanted to include in here the trends we're seeing in terms of engagement and event attendance. So you'll see that drop in numbers picked up because of the pandemic, which is kind of a given, but we're starting to see our numbers to increase again to those pre-pandemic attendance numbers, which we're really excited about. The fall is always much more higher attended than the spring. That's just natural across campus, but the numbers continue to increase, which we're really excited about. So you'll see that 1370 number for the spring this semester, and we're hoping that we'll have even higher numbers continuing in the future. We do a monthly survey every month, so any student who attended an event that month, we send them a survey and get feedback on what they experienced, and it's pretty much all positive feedback that we're getting from students. They love the community building that they're having at these events. They love just being able to do something free, but that's really fun that they can do with their roommates and their friends. And these are some of the things as I was looking through the data that I pulled out that shows that students really see what we're doing and see the mission and reasoning behind it and see why it's so significant to them to have these options to not go out and party. It's a safer alternative to other nightlife activities. They can enjoy the night without doing anything bad. And so we didn't have to tell them to say those things themselves. And so that was really cool for us to see that they understand why we do this and why we provide these things on Thursday nights. And then I did want to highlight a few of the other Gamecock Entertainment events that we offer that aren't Thursday after dark, but still happen on high-risk evenings and nights that we provide for students as another fun alternative option for them. So Carolina Welcome, we obviously have First Night Carolina Bustle at the Russell. Hockey's Quest is one that we've typically done on a Saturday evening during one of the first weeks of school, so a high-risk night for students, and so it gives them an opportunity to do a campus-wide scavenger hunt rather than go out and party. The Homecoming Block Party is a new program that was started this year led by Courtney. It was a very successful event in 5 Points, so we kind of met students where they were at, but shut down 5 Points, had a big stage there, a band, Coach Beamer came out and spoke, and so just a really fun night for students to be there the Friday before homecoming, have an exciting kind of pep rally before the game, but in a safe environment. There were food trucks, things like that really brought the Carolina community together. Our Blockbuster movie series happens every other Friday. So again, a high-risk night, but that happens in the Russell House, and we provide a blockbuster, new movie every other Friday for students to come attend. And so over the past year, we saw about 1,200 students come out to one of those movies, which was really cool. And then the last day of class is obviously a night where students want to celebrate. And so this was our 3rd annual Click on the Field over at Williams-Brice Stadium. And that event is just highly sought after. Students are so excited about it. We had a really good attendance this year, and we will definitely continue to do that event every single year. I know this year it worked out that they were able to go to midnight breakfast after, so we know that a big group of our students were doing something fun and positive and safe that night on the last day of class to celebrate.
I love that event. I think it's so, you should have the experience of getting to be on the football field at some point, so.
And then finally, just wanted to add in a little teaser here for our upcoming events in the fall for everyone to look forward to. We will be doing our USC takeover night at the Fireflies again. So save the date, mark that on your calendar, because it's not just for students, it's for the whole community. But these are some of the other Thursday after dark events that we have coming up in the fall for students to look forward to. And we're excited to keep trying new things. The Winter Village will be a new winter end of the year celebration. Homecoming paint nights, we'll have a homecoming theme canvas that students will paint along following an instructor to paint. So always trying to come up with new ideas. And things for students to be members
Have rock bands. Is that something that you all would consider doing on a regular basis for them? And not necessarily outdoor concerts, because we certainly, when they're really loud rap music, that's our way, it's pretty ugly, but I would think that this would probably help to have some live music come through in smaller buildings.
So we are also the home to a lot of live music that happens for students on campus, so that is part of our offerings. So it's not just a small large cats, we do a large homecoming concert every year, which is also on a Friday night intentionally too. So it's a combination of trying to meet student needs, but also dollars for that.
I do know that Kroger Center is starting to do music series and outdoor concerts and whatnot, which hopefully will engage more students. Yes.
So we're always open to new things. They are.
Any questions anybody wanted to throw out?
Chat.
No questions in the chat.
Well, we are at our time. So let me begin by thanking Amy for her leadership in research. We want to thank Emily for her work over the past year as the coalition coordinator. She will be moving on. She just got a wonderful fellowship that will allow her to complete her PhD. So she's still going to be connected to the coalition, but she needs to finish that paper. And with that, I mean, the coalition is wonderful. We appreciate all of y'all. We know through research that to have prevention-based efforts, they have to be team efforts. So we appreciate this, and I always love this final meeting because it's fun that we're actually building longitudinal data with each of these. So Appreciate everyone's time and everyone's attention. Rex, anything to add for the group? All right, we're good. Y'all enjoy.
Thank you.
We do resume in the fall.
We will see you at graduation.
Next year.
There you go. What you got next?
Meetings, end of the year,
Oh, yeah.
graduation. Something.
I got my invitation.